And now HLA's Executive Director, Barbara Kelley, will begin the OTC 101 webinar.
Thank you, Melissa, and thanks to all of you for joining us today. The Hearing Loss Association of America empowers people with information, advocacy, and a nationwide network of support. We represent all 50 million people in the United States with any degree of hearing loss, and millions more who are at risk for hearing loss. If you are new to HLAA, we encourage you to join our hearing health movement, and you can learn more about our organization at hearingloss.org. We have lots of resources to help you, your family, and your friends when you need to make some decisions about your hearing health and make it a top priority. You can find a local chapter near you, a Walk for Hearing event, which is in 20 cities across the country, or come to our convention or sign up for our hearing health news and alerts. Hearing is an important part of overall health and wellness and how we relate to the world around us. Even a small hearing loss can cause you to miss key conversations. It can affect your relationships, your social interactions, and even affect your performance on the job. If a hearing loss is giving you trouble, or if your family tells you it's an issue, take action. Don't wait. There are more options than ever to treat hearing loss. In 2022, the FDA opened a new category of over-the-counter hearing aids. This is in addition to prescription hearing aids that you get through an audiologist or a hearing aid specialist. OTC hearing aids are for adults only with mild to moderate hearing loss, and that's a very important point. Over-the-counter hearing aids is another pathway to care that gives people choices to treat hearing loss sooner rather than later. Now, there's no one-size-fits-all to hearing care. You could still see a hearing healthcare professional and get an over-the-counter hearing aid. Our recent HLA survey of 974 people on our website showed that many people were still confused about OTC hearing aids and who they were for. Awareness of these products was pretty high, and many said that they were hopeful about the devices. But 55% of people said they didn't know enough about them. And that's why we're here today, to answer your questions and help you make informed decisions about your hearing health. The HLA does not endorse or recommend one product or service over another, but we know that you want to hear about specific products from manufacturers. So we want to give you the information that you want. Today, we are joined by 2 manufacturers and 1 product expert and reviewer to talk about a few OTC products available today. These panelists are going to help answer your questions about over-the-counter hearing aids, and I want to welcome our panelists today and thank them for taking their time to join us. I will introduce each of you and give you a chance to talk a bit about your products and experience. First, we have Dr. Annie Duchin. She's a clinical pediatric audiologist and now head of OTC sales and customer service at WS Audiology in partnership with Sony. Welcome, Annie. Now, what can you tell us about the OTC products that Sony has available today?
Phone or tablet. And what's important about that when you think about the broad range of OTC products that are out there is that it helps those initial settings get closer to the needs of the individual using the hearing aids. And then after that, we have lots of support that's available unlimited from our Sony Hear team. And so we really aim to create a product that looks a little bit different than the hearing aid that some people are used to. We want to get past that stigma, bring more people into the category, and ideally offer products that are safe and high quality and really just help people who are the right candidates to hear better sooner.
Well, thank you, Annie. That's a great description. And I like what you said about helping people who are the right candidates to hear better. Next, we have Jessica Dancis, and she's Senior Marketing Manager with Sonova. She manages the Sennheiser hearing portfolio and is a clinical audiologist, and she's been with Sonova for more than 17 years in various roles. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being here.
You're welcome. What can you share with us today?
Yeah, so we have our Sennheiser All Day Clear OTC hearing aids, and they are crafted by Sonova. Sonova is the world leading manufacturer in prescription hearing solutions. All Day Clear lets you hear the world. They're conveniently self-programmable, and they combine clear and vibrant sound plus seamless audio streaming. And we ensure that they have all day wearing comfort. All Day Clear design, like most of the hearing aid, is hidden behind the ear, and then there's just a little part that's in the ear because that's the most popular and the most comfortable hearing aid design for all day wear. Of course, you could also bring them out if you want to use them more like readers, but we do design it so that it is very comfortable to wear. And frankly, they're a lot of fun. Like my father-in-law, he has a hearing loss, and he went to an audiologist, was diagnosed, but just wouldn't get hearing aids. And that is what we see so often with patients with OTCs. They just wouldn't go for the full service care. So we went and bought them for him. He was able to set them up quickly and easily for himself. And we went right out to a restaurant. And normally I wouldn't recommend this because it's a new world when you get hearing aids, opens up to all those sounds. But he did great. And it was the first time in such a long time that he had been able to understand us clearly and have a conversation. And it really was all thanks to the All Day Clear hearing aid. So it makes a huge difference. And then because we have our Bluetooth Classic streaming, he was able to make a phone call. And he was funny because he kept saying, "Can you hear them? I hear them so clearly. Can you hear them?" I'm like, "No, we can't hear them. Only you. That's all you." So it makes such a huge difference to be able to hear clearly and then have all the connectivity. And then the other thing that makes All Day Clear more unique is that, Market Track is a key researcher in hearing care, and they found that 70% of consumers really do want to be able to see a provider and get support and looking for advice from a provider. That's why All Day Clear, unlike other OTCs, can be programmed by a hearing care provider in their office. So you can go into a hearing clinic if you need to, and you can purchase any services that you need or want, right? Sometimes you just want someone to look in your ears and you just want a little bit of help. And that's why we designed All Day Clear, both to be self-fitting and something you can easily do on your own, but also something that you can go into a clinic and get support for.
Jessica, I like your personal experience with the product. I think that that's really great to hear. It's great for you as an audiologist to be able to experience that firsthand. And I like something you said about you can take the hearing aid out when you don't want to use it. And that's what we hear from people is sometimes they are not ready to wear a hearing aid 7 days a week, 10 hours a day, but they have some situational hearing that where they want better audio quality, where they want to hear better. So thank you for bringing that up. And if you notice, audience, we have two major hearing aid manufacturers, WS Audiology and Sonova, who are carrying over-the-counter brands for hearing health care. So thank you. Next, we have Steve Taddei. And just a second here, I got to get my right thing up. Okay. Steve's an audiologist, and he's co-founder and lab director of HearAdvisor. He's also senior contributor at hearingtracker.com, where he reviews hearing aids and earplugs. So, Steve, tell us about your experience with over-the-counter hearing aids.
Sure, I'd be happy to, and definitely thank you for having me on. So I guess to start all this, I can talk a little bit more about HearAdvisor and Hearing Track and what we've been doing. So this project kind of began a few years ago, around August of 2022, and what we were realizing, and by we I mean myself, there's Dr. Abram Bailey, who's also an audiologist, and he's the owner of hearingtracker.com, which is just an online resource for pretty much everything hearing health, if you're not familiar with it. Any listeners aren't familiar with it. And then we also have a scientific advisor who is Dr. Andy Sabin, and he's a hearing scientist that works at Bose. And the three of us were kind of kicking around this new category of OTC devices and wondering what new barriers might exist for individuals with hearing loss. Some examples would be that you're obviously not going to see a provider anymore. all devices across the board, from like a $200 OTC device or less to a prescription hearing aid, they all share very similar marketing claims. I think everyone at this point knows that the most common complaints of individuals with hearing loss is difficulty hearing speech in quiet and then hearing speech in noise. And almost with some level of humor, you'll see that terminology being used across the entire range of hearing technologies. So it becomes very difficult then to start navigating, I think, what product might be best for you if you're relying on the marketing terminology from the companies. Another point that we were kind of realizing is that a lot of the current online review sites, they were relying on like subjective hands-on experiences, and nothing was really covering sound quality, which these are audio devices. So sound quality is a very key element of, I guess, the ultimately how good a product is for an individual. So we created this this project that we call HearAdvisor, and we're objectively testing prescription hearing aids, over-the-counter hearing aids, true wireless stereo earbuds, and as you mentioned, Barbara, some concert earplugs recently as well. So we're trying to fill that hole on overall audio performance, like speech and noise performance, speech and quiet, music streaming, own voice sound quality, feedback, kind of volatility of devices. That way, when people are searching for hearing devices, either for themselves or a loved one, they'll be able to get a little bit more information about the actual audio performance outside of just hands-on experience, such as maybe like battery life. So I guess to more directly answer your question, like what have we found? We have tested somewhere in the ballpark of around 100 different devices at this point over the past couple years. And we've seen a lot of variation in the overall performance. We break it down into different kind of buckets for price. OTC devices and true wireless stereo earbuds around $0 to $500. We've seen a significant variation in the overall performance. And not surprisingly, the overall audio performance tends to be a little bit worse. If you go a little bit higher, between $500 to $1,000, we again see a very broad range of performance, but overall performance is increasing. And then as we get to the $1,000 plus category, and certainly up higher into the cost of like prescription hearing aids, performance does saturate. So as expected, there is this general trend that the more money you spend, the better the audio performance is from a hearing device standpoint. But with that said, we have definitely found some products that do deliver on the ultimate purpose, I would say, of OTC devices, and that was to offer overall good value, similar benefit, or at least good benefit at a lower cost. So we have certainly found some devices that would, I'd say, deliver on that value proposition of a reasonable assurance of safety and effectiveness, but it varies considerably.
Steve, I think, that's so important because over the years, we've always heard from people who come to us, do you have a rating of hearing aids? Everybody wants a consumer's reports type rating of hearing aids, like you do washers and dryers in cars. But hearing loss is so variable. What works for me and my hearing loss might not work for you. So we know that there's no one size fits all, but I think it's good that you rate them, and you probably have different features that people can look for. Are they Bluetooth accessible? Do they have a telecoil? Are they in the ear? Things like that. So you really don't compare what's best, do you? Because what's best for me might not be best for you.
But that's a great point. And this is one of the wonderful reasons why hearing sciences is so much fun. It's very complicated when we look towards, hearing disorders in general. What we're doing is looking at the sound quality aspect, reporting on 5 common sound quality, I guess you could say, points like speech and noise performance, speech and quiet performance, feedback volatility, own voice sound quality. So how boomy is it when you put them in your ears, and then streamed music quality. And that comes from a few surveys that we ran through Hearing Tracker. So Hearing Tracker, we work very closely with, and that's where you can find a little bit more of the hands-on side of things. And if you're in need of a telecoil, you can find more information about devices that offer those features. But yes, we I guess together between Hearing Tracker and HearAdvisor, we do try as best as possible cover a broad range and providing as much information as possible so that people can, with their unique unique needs find maybe a better path forward.
Right. I think it's important that you've chosen those 5 qualities that are important to everybody. Of course, speech and noise is so important. I can still tell that even starting this webinar that we still have confusion that I'd like to clear up, and the audiologist sitting here could help as well. People still ask, do you need a prescription to get over-the-counter hearing aids? So there are 2 pathways to care. Traditionally, the old days and still currently, there are prescription hearing aids, which you get through an audiologist or a hearing aid specialist. And then this new pathway to care is over-the-counter hearing aids, which you don't need a prescription for. But I think where people might be getting confused, for example, we had Jessica who talks about they still give that service of a hearing, an audiologist who's going to help people through it. So Jessica and Annie, maybe you could talk more about how you don't need a prescription, but you can still have the help of a hearing care professional. Who wants to go first?
I can
Jessica,
go.
Annie, go ahead, Annie.
Otherwise, we're kind of like, who's going?
Right, I should call it something.
Yeah, that's okay. So I can speak specifically to how the Sony products work, and you don't need a prescription for our products. Now, there are lots of things that the FDA tries to do to make sure they end up in the right ears for the right people. But I think it's important to call out that when you don't see a hearing care professional, it's kind of hard to know what mild to moderate hearing loss means. What does that look like? How do you even know if you have mild to moderate hearing loss? And so I think I'll just start by describing that and how you might make that decision before you decide what to choose and how you would get help. So the best way to know your hearing loss across the frequency range specifically is from a hearing care professional. That is the gold standard of hearing care, and I think that's important for people to understand. Some people either don't want to go see a hearing care professional or they don't have access to for some reason. Maybe they live in a more rural area. Maybe they don't have cost coverage through their insurance. So there are other ways to get a general idea of your hearing. There's a lot of online screeners, like Steve mentioned about hearing aids. They vary in, I'll say, correctness in terms of the screener, and it's not going to be as good as a diagnostic evaluation, but it's a good place to start. We have one on the Sony website to help people understand, do I even fall in the range of this product to help me? Perceptually, when you're walking around, if you have mild to moderate hearing loss, you usually do pretty okay and quiet, and you struggle more in noise. And that's when we start to see the signs of hearing loss or that mild to moderate hearing loss. Now, I'm oversimplifying it on purpose, but just to give a thought about who would even consider our products. Once you set up the Sony hearing aids, like I mentioned, once you get past that self-fitting part of setup, there are options to adjust the sound quality and volume of your devices within the app. So the app is meant to be very user-friendly. I think it's important to call out that most of our hearing aid users are new hearing aid users. And for all hearing aid users that are new, whether it's OTC or prescription hearing aids, things are going to sound different to you at first. Hearing aids are not an instant fix like a reader's glasses type of situation. It takes your brain some time to adjust. And I think that's an important expectation going into this process, along with, okay, what can the technology do and who's going to help me? Just knowing going into it that it's not a perfect fix. And over time with usage, your brain typically adapts and uses the technology better. Now, for the Sony devices, if you need help with them, we have a dedicated team of tiered support to ensure that we can help both with the technology situations, like maybe you're pretty savvy on your phone, but something feels a little bit tricky about the setup. Our tier 1 does a lot of troubleshooting to help with any connection, any setup through the app, things like that. And then we also have dedicated audiologists. So once you get to the other side, if you're like, okay, I set this up, but my voice sounds funny, or I don't really know how I want to adjust this, we can make suggestions to you via call, text, or chat, and that's unlimited support that comes with our devices to help get them adjusted in a way that you have success with them in different environments.
That's an important point you made, first of all, about managing expectations, because whether it's an over-the-counter hearing aid or prescription hearing aid, you have to know what to expect going in, that they don't correct hearing like glasses might correct vision. although hearing aids are really, really good and really helpful. You also mentioned, and Jessica mentioned as well, that you do have support services. Steve, I want to ask you, in listing over-the-counter products, do you name which of the products do have backup support services? That's the first part of my question. And then perhaps you could also answer something about is there a trial period? Can you return these devices? Because what if you get one and it doesn't, it might not be the one for you. You might have a better one or a different one. So Steve, first of all, do you tell us which ones have support services? And second of all, talk to the return policies, and maybe all of you can talk to that as well.
Sure. And that is definitely something that we report on through hearingtracker.com. And it's more confusing than I think it needs to be, but HearAdvisor focuses on the objective sound quality testing. That information is then shared with Hearing Tracker, and I do also work for Hearing Tracker, as you mentioned early on, and that's where I'll write a more, I guess, thorough hands-on review of the devices that will include elements like trial period, for example, and or what is the delivery model of the device? Is it direct to consumer? With remote programming, can you still get some feedback from an audiologist? So those are elements that are found on hearingtracker.com.
I think it's also important to note that we keep mentioning these are for adults only with mild to moderate hearing loss. And, if you wake up one day and you have sudden hearing loss or pain in your ear or drainage and you can't hear, you shouldn't run to go buy an over-the-counter product. All of these products by FDA regulations have to have red flag warnings on the box. And they say that if you're experiencing anything like I just discussed, you really should see your physician. And those devices aren't appropriate for you. Annie, could you talk more about how do people know if they have a mild to moderate hearing loss? Most people with a mild loss are walking around and it's not really a big deal for them. It's not a problem. However, we know some functional problems they're probably having. And I just want to speak to everybody, whether you have a mild to moderate hearing loss or no hearing loss, everybody seems to want good sound quality. We're all looking for that in any of our audio experiences. So Annie, Jessica, could you speak to more of the mild to moderate hearing loss and how people might recognize that they might need to take a step?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and I think, Annie certainly said how very often if you have a perceived mild to moderate hearing loss, you might hear okay and quiet. But I know when I saw patients very often, they were like, people mumble. Why does everybody mumble? And it's because very often people have trouble with those higher pitches, and the higher pitches are where the consonants of speech are. So you're getting the volume, you're getting the power, you're getting the vowels. So instead of hearing bread, you might hear thread, because it's those higher pitches that tend to be a little bit more of a challenge. And then when you get into background noise, then that's even hiding more of those higher pitches and just swamping out, and your brain has to work harder to pick out what you want to hear from what you don't want to hear. So, what hearing aids can do, what All Day Clear does, is it's actually listening, amplifying those higher pitches if that's what needs to be, and then as well as to help clean out some of that background noise. There's no perfect. Anybody who tells you there's perfect, you should run in the other the other direction. But it does a really good job, and it has different environments within the hearing aid. So it's constantly listening to the environment and then automatically adapting. So if you're in a quieter environment, it's going to provide one type of help. And if you're in a noisy environment, it's going to provide a different type of help to make sure that you're getting the best solution for that particular situation. But yeah, really, it is perceived mild to moderate, but definitely if you're having problems with your ears, you would want to go get that checked out. It's always a good idea to have a professional hearing test. It's always nice to have someone look in your ears and make sure it's not wax. and that type of thing. And that's one of the reasons why we partner with providers. And if you go on our website, we have a list of providers who are familiar and comfortable with all day clear. They do diagnostic testing. They are professionals. So that's a good place to start. We do have a screener on it as well, but I always say, hey, it's great if you can go in there and see someone. And then you can buy the hearing aids from them, or you can buy them on our website. We have different options for you as well.
I think one of the big flags of mild hearing loss is not being able to hear on the phone or understand the conversation. So we all put on the speakerphone and it blares, right? Which the sound gets distorted. But hearing loss is generally progressive. And this could be that first step. We know people wait for several reasons to get a hearing aid, whether it's cost or, they don't want to look like an old person. Although, have you seen the hearing aids nowadays? You can hardly see them, right? They don't have the big ear molds anymore. They're very sleek. Or it could be just access to care. I think Annie mentioned that. You might not even have access to a hearing care provider. You might be in a small town. So I think it could be the first step that people take, and then they end up in the good care of an audiologist or a hearing aid specialist. Also, Annie mentioned a lot about using an app on the phone to adjust. Talk about seniors. I think seniors should know right from the box if they want to, seniors meaning older people who might not be real comfortable with technology because they didn't grow up with it and don't want to fiddle with it. Are there over-the-counter products that they should look for? Or, what if they don't have a smartphone or aren't comfortable fiddling with an app? Annie.
Yeah, I can comment on that, Barbara. And actually, if it's okay with you, before I answer that, I just want to loop back to something that you brought up, which is super important, which is trial and return. And I just want to loop back for just a second because we get this question all the time, and I don't want people to leave confused about what to think about this topic. If you look up an OTC hearing aid and it is not explicitly clear about how and when to return it, don't buy it. I think it's a really good indication of the quality of the device. Steve, I'd love your input on it too, but we make it super clear to people that they have at least 45 days to try this product. We know that it can take the brain at least 30 days to get used to a hearing aid with consistent use. And so it should be such that, especially if you don't have the opportunity to see a hearing care professional ahead of time, or you choose not to, within this category, someone should get to really be able to try it and make sure it's the right choice for them. And so I think that speaks not just to convenience of purchasing something, but the quality of what's being offered. So I think that's just one thing I want to call out, Barbara, for people to know. When thinking about, to loop back to your question about seniors using these products, is it easy? Do they need help? What should they expect? Things like that. We always say that the people who use our products successfully are not necessarily all tech savvy, but they are tech willing. So they must, for our products, be able to have compatible phones for them to work. If you don't have a smartphone that's compatible with our products, which is the majority of smartphones out there, then you're not going to be able to get the full benefit of the Sony products. There are some OTC devices that don't have smartphone controls, but if they don't, you should look for things like, how can I adjust the volume? Is there a button, right? Like, what are the ways in which I could manipulate the sound for my comfort if it's not through a phone? And when it comes to the smartphone sense, right, there are things that maybe I think is very simple and maybe someone else think is very complicated. There's a large range of technology literacy. And so the other thing I would think about is leaning back into what kind of support is available. So if you have a smartphone and you know how to download an app, but you're like, I don't know about walking through this process independently, that's exactly why we have the level of support that we have, which is that the process is designed that it can be independent. But if someone needs help, our team, for example, will sit on the phone with that person through the entire setup process, the adjustment process. Some people like to chit chat about their experience. So we make sure they get this really hands-on helping experience to get to where they need to be. And when I say tech willing, it means that if you get stuck, if you're not the type of person that wants to figure out why you're stuck in the process, then you should probably go see an audiologist, who will literally handhold through every single part and has the control of programming and setup. And so I do think that I would encourage people to have the confidence to try it. It is built and designed to be easy to understand, but knowing that if you get stuck, making sure you choose a manufacturer that offers support to get you whatever hump you're stuck on over that.
That's so important. And I know Jessica probably wants to talk about that as well. You know, we have to remember there's a person behind this great technology, right? And that sounds like both Sony and Sennheiser have taken that into consideration. Jessica, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I love Annie's tech willing. I think that that's a great description for what I would probably say is about 75% of the people who are using and enjoying Sennheiser, the all day clears, because we also use an app. So just for the setup and adjustments, it's very easy to use. It's very simple. My father-in-law is 80. He's not a techie person, but it was really easy for him. And in fact, our setup process only takes a couple of minutes because we are actually able to, because Sonova has tested and fit so many millions of ears, that we were able to narrow down the setup process to is it sound clear enough? It's a speech test and not having to do a whole bunch of tone. So it's really, they get a quick fit, but it sounds great. But it's interesting. Like I said, that's probably about 75 to 85% of our people. The other section is people who buy it for their parents and they do the setup on their phone. So we are seeing quite a bit of that as well. And we know that because our call center, we've got people there who will help and, hold people through the process, answer any questions. And very often, it's one thing if you're setting it up for yourself, it's easy to do, but how do I set this up for my mom? So we end up getting calls. Hey, this is great. My mom needs this. How do I do this? And then it is almost like for the parent at that point, or whoever you're setting it up for, they're just using the buttons on the hearing aid. But the child can go in, you need a little more volume here and turn it up. So I think you'll actually be surprised that there is a wide range of the types of people who are using this. And sometimes it's driven by the person, like I'm finally hit the wall and need help. And sometimes it's your family. And this is going back to how do you need a hearing aid? Well, if everyone around you is telling you need one, you probably need one.
That's right. Right. That's so true. And that's so true. And I would think, say, in 10 years, most of the people will already be very tech aware or tech savvy. Yeah. There are just some people now who didn't grow up using that technology. So that's great. Maybe any of you could answer the next one. We're talking a little bit about older people. Have you seen younger people entering the market? I mean, people in their 30s and 40s are experiencing noise-induced hearing loss, high frequency hearing loss in the mild to moderate, sometimes pushed to a little severe in the high frequency. Do we see younger people stepping into this market? Steve, do you have any information on that?
Sure. It's also worth noting that I think we're also seeing music-induced and sound-induced hearing disorders skyrocketing, even a much younger population as teens and preteens, because we all have cell phones, and with earbud use, the sound levels in our ear canals can reach well over 100 decibels, which at volumes like that, you have around 15 minutes before you have fully exhausted your hearing system for most people, and you're basically causing damage. But Abram Bailey from Hearing Tracker, he would probably be a better person to discuss this, other than I know we do get quite a few emails through HearAdvisor with people asking, and the age ranges considerably from people, I'd say, in their 30s, well, to more like geriatric.
Right. And when I said noise induced, I did mean the music and cell phone use and sports stadiums. The big push on pumping up the sound is just incredible. And you're at least at a football game at an hour at really high decibels. It's a real problem, is protecting that hearing. And that's why this new category is so important, because, hearing health is part of overall health. And if we can get people to take that step into something and recognize that they have to care for their hearing sooner than they might normally would, it's really critical. We hear from a lot of people who like to use assistive listening systems. They like to use Bluetooth with their phone. They like to use telecoil with some systems. Do any of these products offer that? And Steve, you touched on that briefly. You want to expand on that, and then maybe Annie and Jessica talk about your products.
Sure. And many OTC devices do offer some form of Bluetooth connection and or Bluetooth streaming. To my knowledge, none of them currently also have like telecoils or T-coils in them. So that's a big consideration for people who are interested in that level of technology. I know Auracast is discussed a lot, but one of the barriers with Auracast is I just don't think it's rolled out enough where it's beneficial to people at this time to have that kind of Auracast broadcast where you get similar functionality as telecoils. So unfortunately, we're still waiting with regard to that, but many OTC devices do have Bluetooth connection to Android, iOS devices. Many of them also do have streaming. And one of the questions in, I guess, the Q&A section was, how prevalent is it that you might be able to adjust like the spectrum, bass, middle, treble like you can in your car for streamed audio? And since I believe there's over 40 OTC companies right now, so you can imagine how much variation there is in their overall Bluetooth offering and the apps. Almost every single one of them is different, and unfortunately that makes it so, I think, difficult to answer questions broadly like this. But overall, yes, many of them do offer Bluetooth streaming, hands-free calls, for example, as well, with I think varied quality.
And I think that's great, Steve, because when the FDA regulations come out, they did not put in there that manufacturers had to have a telecoil or had to have Bluetooth. So we see technology being innovative and responding to consumers. And I think, I feel we're still really at day one of this new market and the technology and just the lifespan of hearing aids I've seen, from analog hearing aids to digital. And who would have believed that, in the palm of our hand, we could hold our TV, our computer, and our cell phone. So I think the future is exciting. And, who knows what we'll see. And Jessica, would you like to speak on your products and streaming and connectivity? And then Annie, you can speak on your products to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. One of the things that I love about Sonova, and this is both the prescription and our OTC and our Sennheiser hearing aids, is that we are the only hearing aid manufacturer that has Bluetooth Classic in it, which means that we connect and can do hands-free calls for both iPhone and Android. So you've got the great connectivity where you imagine, like I was saying, my father, like he was just talking into the hearing aid. So you could actually answer on the hearing aid, talk into it, walk around, do the dishes, all those other things that you want to do. And it isn't limited. A lot of them really are direct to iPhone. So they do a great job with iPhone, but then you think about the Android, and so many people have other types of phones. So, we have actually several different types of Bluetooth systems in our hearing aids. One is the Bluetooth Classic. We also have another where you can connect it to a TV, a Bluetooth that's specifically sending to a TV streamer. So there's a lot of different ways, and it's built into the hearing aid. So all you need to do is connect them, and sometimes they will even connect themselves automatically, and then you are good to go. So it can be a lot of fun. It's a nice, it's an added benefit to getting the hearing aids besides, in addition to hearing better.
Yeah. Of course, prescription hearing aids there are choices for Bluetooth and telecoils. And if that's important to you, those are the decisions now consumers can make. They have a choice of what they want to do. Annie, can you speak to the connectivity?
Sure. So if you look at our Sony portfolio, our 3 products that we offer, we try to offer different things for different people within this category of product. So Bluetooth connectivity is one thing that we consider. So in one of our products, our E10, it's the one floating behind me here in my screen. It's our more earbud style product. They do have connectivity, and it's for iOS only. And I say that just for transparency and understanding how our streaming works. Now, all of our products work with all the hearing aid features, including that self-fitting I've talked about, and adjustment for Android and iOS. So while we wanted to have streaming available, it's not the number one priority of our portfolio. We want it available for those people who are active, wanting to stream on the go, whether it's phone calls or media like videos, music, things like that. But when we looked at our whole portfolio, we also know there are other things that are really important to people on top of Bluetooth streaming, which is I want something really discreet. Our C10 and our C20 are nearly invisible, what we call completely in the canal device. So we aimed for that to be for people who want hearing aids but have cosmetic concerns, which we know is a great cause of stigma and reason why people don't uptake hearing aids. And then rechargeability. So while we offer Bluetooth streaming through our E10 device, we want to make sure that depending on what the number one priority is for that person, whether it is streaming, which they could get through the E10, or it is that discreteness, or it is rechargeability, or one of our products offers a size 10 battery, because some people are still more comfortable carrying batteries around than having that rechargeable option, making sure that the broad offering of our portfolio can get at the priorities of each listener.
Thank you. We had a question from one of our viewers. We have lots of questions from our viewers today. We won't be able to answer them all here, but we'll do our best for follow-up. One of the questions was, do these over-the-counter products have device updates? And can they be done without the help of an audiologist? Now, of course, the idea of an over-the-counter product is that you don't need an audiologist or you don't need a hearing aid specialist. But I think the question is, are updates provided? Annie, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So because our products are app driven, all of our updates come through our app. So everything that you need in terms of the update of the product of your function or your app experience comes through that Sony Hearing Control app. There is no requirement to see a provider for an update or change.
Jessica?
Yeah, so I mean, ours are app driven as well. So there are automatic updates that come through, and so the hearing aids in that way are updated. We just had that extra benefit. If you want to go to a provider, then it's a different kind of update. It's not really an update. Now that's a professional programming, which then can add extra tailoring to the sound. But yeah, if you can do it all on your own, it's all self-fitting, and then the app will, if there's any updates, it would come through the app. So absolutely.
Thank you. Now, over-the-counter products are not fitted especially to your particular ear, like prescription hearing aids are. Are they comfortable? Do they come in different sizes for your ears? Do you rate that, Steve? I don't mean rate, but do you list those features on your website?
Yes, so we do describe whether the device is like behind the ear, receiver in canal, invisible in ear or near invisible, or just an in the ear device. So we do report definitely on that, and we're seeing lots of questions about, how do you fit the dome, just the overall comfort of the device, and I think this all points to why audiologists have been so necessary in the hearing journey, I suppose, because it is so individualized and it's so difficult to apply a one size fit to everyone. But that's one of the compromises you have to accept when you're going the OTC route. You have to realize that you might be leaving, and likely are leaving, some benefit with regard to comfort, audio performance, overall functionality on the table, hopefully for an overall lower cost. But we do report a lot of that information across the devices we've tested.
And that's so important, Steve. I said at the beginning to know the expectations of an over-the-counter device. And that is the beauty of these two pathways to care and consumer choice. And what we try to do is just clarify those choices. And that's why you're here today, because I think it's still confusing and consuming for somebody who's trying to deal with the hearing loss to decide what to do. I mean, consumer choice is always great, but we're all here to help people through that. And that's why I really appreciate you coming here. Jessica, is there one question that pops up from your patients that's kind of across the board that you feel you could bring up an answer?
Yeah, the thing that we get most calls on is just regular Bluetooth, because it's, for a lot of people, that's the first time they're getting something. We use Bluetooth Classic, so it's the same Bluetooth pairing and connection you would have if you had, say, a set of regular earbuds, or for phone calls, or just anything else. So a lot of people are familiar with it, but a lot of people are in that sort of getting that hearing loss range. Maybe this is their first set. So it's not hard, it's super easy, and we're always able to help walk them through it and get them set up or whatever it is. But that tends to be our biggest phone call, which, considering the hearing aid is about hearing, and we're getting, hey, I love these, just help me do this, it's wonderful, I will take those. Are the best kinds of phone calls because we can easily help them. But yeah, that's the most common, is just, how do I get it set up? And or hey, this is Bluetooth. And yes, well, Bluetooth is temperamental sometimes. It's just the nature of the beast.
Annie, thank you. That's
true.
interesting. Annie, is there a common question other than that one that you get, that you see on a daily basis?
Yeah, when I think about the people who call in our support team, there's kind of this category of pre-purchase questions and post-purchase questions, right? And from a pre-purchase perspective, I touched on this a little bit earlier, but people are always wondering, is this right for me? Or how do I know that this is right for me? And then which one do I choose if it is right for me? And so in addition to the screener that we're always recommending to help people get people some input to how they're hearing, our hearing aids also have a feature within that self-fitting feature, where if they have a significantly greater than mild to moderate hearing loss, our hearing aids actually stop them. They can't keep using them because we know that they're not going to receive the amount of benefit that they need based on their severity of hearing loss. Now, that's a choice we made to get the right people wearing them. It's not always a business advantage, right, to tell people, don't use this anymore, you need a prescription hearing aid. But we try to do our best to get people to the place that they need to be, both from their hearing needs and their preferences. So that is one thing. Is it right for me, and how do I know? And there's various resources we send them to, along with how our hearing aids work. And then on the back end, we have a similar experience to what Jessica described, which is they're like, there's usually just one little thing, like, how do I get past this part of setup? Or they're past setup. And what we often hear people say, because they're brand new hearing aid users, no issues with setup, but my voice sounds funny. And they're just asking the same questions we hear all new hearing aid users are, which is like, what is normal when getting a new hearing aid? And so this is where our audiologists jump in to give some practical counseling around, this is what it's like to listen through microphones. This is why you're hearing in this way, along with some fine-tuning suggestions they can make. But I think we see, once they figure out it's right for them and they can do the setup, which is the vast majority of people independently, they then are like, okay, well, how do I get used to this? And then how do I adjust it for me in different scenarios? And we like to make sure that they have the tools they need so they can actually maximize the benefits of the devices. So imagine you have an iPhone in front of you and it can do 1,000 things, and maybe you only need to do 3 things. But we want you to know what that extra thing is. So when you walk into that noisy restaurant, you can adjust your microphones so you can hear the person in front of you better and enjoy your experience. So we try to enable them with the tools to adjust on their own so they feel confident about using their hearing aids in different settings.
Those are great answers. Steve, you mentioned the price points, and you kind of said you get what you pay for, right? Both Jessica and Annie, let's talk specifically, if you're comfortable, what your products cost. I think people would want to know. Jessica, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have 2 styles. They're both behind the ear, and then there's a little part that goes in the ear. Again, ours is called all day because we want to make sure that it is truly comfortable for all day wear. So that's why we went with those styles. Both of them have the same technology and they're both the same price. So it's $9.95 for the kit. So everything comes, you can just go ahead and buy it. And all of the setup and everything is in there. like I said, you do have the option to add and go to a provider and purchase professional support if you want to do something like that, but you don't have to. It's all right there in the kit. Everything is there for you.
That's great. And, we have been in touch with some audiologists who are unbundling their prices.
Yeah.
And they are perfectly willing to help people with an over-the-counter hearing aid for, fee for service. And they should be paid for what they provide. Some audiologists, when you get a prescription hearing aid or hearing aid specialist as well, will bundle that price in there with the testing, the fitting, the many visits, the trials. That's one model, but we've seen some unbundling. So they're very willing to help people with an over-the-counter device. Annie, you want to talk about the price points on the Sony devices?
Yep, I won't get into all the details of how the features are different, but our products are priced a little bit differently depending on what style and features they offer. They all come in a kit like Jessica described, so you get 2 hearing aids and a charger if it's applicable to the device, along with some cleaning and care supplies and sleeves, domes to get you started. So the price range of our kits is from $7.99 to $10.99, and that can waver a little bit lower if you look at the different places where our products are offered. We occasionally have different promotions at different times of the year, and that's to try to make things even a little bit more accessible. So our C10 sometimes is at $699.99, and it ranges within that price. I think it's important to call out that our pricing ranges, like I mentioned, based on what those features are and what it offers. So like our E10, the earbud I mentioned earlier that has that Bluetooth streaming, also has rechargeability. It has 2 microphones and directionality. So you will see an increase in capacity of that device with increase in price.
And that's important because prescription hearing aids vary as well. If you want a prescription hearing aids that detects when you fall, monitors your blood pressure, speaks to you, you can pay as high as you want, but there's some good basic hearing aids that are maybe at a price point that's more affordable for people. You can never put a price on good hearing, right? We know, but we know that Medicare doesn't cover hearing aids, does cover cochlear implants for those thinking about that. Some insurance plans have a hearing aid coverage. Some Medicare Advantage plans have a hearing aid coverage, but very often cost is a barrier. And that might be one of the reasons people want to step into the over-the-counter market. Steve, do you want to elaborate on price points with either over-the-counter hearing aids or prescription hearing aids?
Sure. There's a lot we can say from maybe it's worth starting in the prescription category. And as you said, clinically, prices vary considerably based on the costs of the clinic and whether it's bundled or unbundled. We have multiple generations of hearing technologies going back many, many years now that are still available in clinics. And then hearing aids also tend to be offered across different, technology levels, you can say. So there's like a basic model, a mid-level, and then a Cadillac model. And some of the questions worth asking when you're being fit with hearing aids is there a significant difference between the quality of these products? And there actually is a large body of research from the academic community that doesn't necessarily support a very big difference or any difference at all when you go up to those highest tiers of prescription hearing aids. So something that I would generally do when I was in clinic, and it was a nonprofit that I worked for, and cost was always a concern, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we would generally then fit people with these lower tier technologies, follow best practices, perform real ear measurements, and make sure that the fittings were appropriate for them, have appropriate follow-up care, talk about accessories, and tune the devices to their individual needs, and people would do extremely, extremely well. So one of the, discussion points with this OTC category now is when you're starting to push the cost into the 1,000 and above 1,000, like 1,500, 2,000, and some OTC devices are even $3,000, it really doesn't deliver on that value proposition because you can get prescription hearing aids fit by a provider that starts with an audiologic evaluation, rules out medical issues, includes hearing conservation discussions, tinnitus, telecoils, custom fits, everything that you can imagine, as long as it's like a best practices clinic for cheaper or lower cost than some OTC devices are sold for. So it becomes very difficult. But I forget who asked it over in the Q&A, there are some lower cost devices, sub $1,000, that do offer a good value. Is it the same as a prescription hearing aid? Absolutely not. Even if it's just the hands-on guidance you get, telecoil capabilities, battery life. I mean, there's a lot of variables that will limit it, but there are some that do offer a good value for those with a mild to moderate hearing loss.
And that's where I think if we have some educated consumers figuring out what's important to them, I'm going to have to wrap this up. It's been such a great discussion. Something struck me that if it really weren't for the major hearing aid manufacturers and the audiology profession who've really given so much to allow this category, because I hear about your technology from Sennheiser and Sony, and it's really the millions of dollars of research and development that the hearing aid companies have done that allow you to offer these good products in your audiology services and the profession. So thank you very much. I hope Steve's information that he has online will tell people where these products are available, because that's what people want to know. So I just want to say thank you all panelists. This has been great. I feel like we could talk forever, and I hope we've given people some really helpful information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And as Barbara mentioned, we're now out of time, but thank you guys for such a wonderful discussion. And thank you to our live captioner, Lisa Johnston. Thank you for our participants for joining us for this HLAA OTC 101 Ask the Experts webinar. You'll be getting a follow-up email with feedback and a link to the recording soon. And the best way to stay up to date is to sign up for our HLAA hearing news and alerts. You can do that right here. When you sign up, you'll learn about other webinars, events, advocacy opportunities, and more. And please also check out our resources. We have OTC resources here, and you can also find them at hearingloss.org/OTC. We have a checklist, shopping guide, articles, past webinar recordings, and we really hope you'll share this information with others to get their questions answered too. We like to say that even if you're not a candidate for an OTC product, you may be able to help someone else make an informed decision. We're all hearing loss influencers. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a wonderful day.